Right. Next topic, Microsoft faces a major cloud outage, echoing Amazon's AWS recent DNS failures and service disruptions. I find this quite a boring topic, but it's impactful. Alice, we've seen a lot of similarities in the most recent outages between Microsoft and Amazon. I think the scale of this was different. It's, I mean, in Amazon, it was kind of just US region, but thousands of third-party servers sort of collapsed because they depended upon Amazon for bits of their service. And it just showed the risk of a single region failure, whereas Microsoft was much more about them and their customers and Azure. So you had like long duration with Amazon, a shorter duration with Microsoft. And it was mostly Amazon services like Microsoft 365 and Xbox that were taken out of that. But it's, the commonality here is a failure of DNS record keeping, which propagates through the system and it takes ages to replace itself and refresh itself. Yada yada. Is this just too boring a problem for people to really get their head around or care?
I was struck by you said the word boring, and you said it again. There's a lot of hackers out there who want you to find it boring because that's how they can cause so much chaos and disruption. They want everything to be kind of hidden in acronyms and confusing language and things like DNS, which most people don't understand. I work in digital policy, and it's taken me years to get my head around what actually is the DNS, why do I care about it? And actually, the more that people find it boring, the more we will just keep seeing these attacks. And, if people don't care enough about them, by the time there's something too big to undo or too impactful, like we've seen this year with M&S and, Land Rover or Range Rover, it's too late to do anything.
Emily, I want to talk to you about the DNS industry and why we don't hear much from them, why people don't really know about them. But before that, let's think about what is the DNS and how it works. Okay. This is such a boring subject. I've lived with this most of my life. I've configured DNS records. I've run critical web services. And the best thing to do is literally read out what the chat is saying at the moment. How it works: when you request a website, your browser contacts a DNS server to resolve the domain name into an IP address. This is typically a multi-step process involving several DNS servers, including authoritative servers, recursive resolvers, and cache layers. It's critical because it allows websites and online services to be reachable by name instead of requiring people to remember long IP addresses. But if it fails or if it's misconfigured, users cannot access services even if the server hosting the service is up and running. It's like the postman losing all the addresses in the world and having to deliver posts. And it's like, where's my post? My house is still here. Why can't you deliver the post? Because there's no address system anymore. And common issues are DNS misconfiguration, DNS server downtime. Now, and what I think is DNS caching problems. So the DNS resolvers, propagate themselves with fresh records and hang on to those duff records until they refresh again. So you can have stuff can't be fixed easily. And Microsoft published that it was an inadvertent tenant configuration change. Now, a lot of people in the news and tech industry have been trying to, work out even I hung Gemini this morning. I said, Gemini, what is an inadvertent tenant configuration change? Gemini just started looping. It couldn't. I'm working on that and trying to work out what Amazon means. I'll be back to you. And an hour later, it was still. But Emily, DNS is clearly critical. And in cybersecurity, you know that if you can hit the DNS with, say, phishing attack websites and things, it's a kill switch. You can take out a lot of attack vector by doing that. And we see that because it's a kill switch for major businesses.
Yes, and I think that's exactly the point. The internet was designed as this decentralized network of networks. Nobody's in charge, but there's one element that is a choke point, and that is the domain name system. DNS means domain name system, and that is the thing that gives humans the ability to find things on the internet. Machines like reading numbers, people can remember names. So it's the name to address a crossover. So it's really important. And actually, as people I see policymakers always gravitate towards the DNS as a solution. It's terrible that these bad things are happening online, whether it's the distribution of images of child abuse, whether it's scams and fraud, something that we all work on. Can't you just eliminate the domain name? And in some cases, you should, because it's been created very recently. It doesn't have any other purpose. And actually, if you want to kind of stop that thing happening, go to the DNS. But the outages of AWS and Microsoft also are a warning sign to policymakers and other people of be careful what you wish for, because if you tamper with the DNS and take big things out of the internet, you take big things out of the internet, and there are many orders of damage that occur from that very small change.